Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fine, thank you. But you know, what I'm going to start off with is in a little way sad that I'm bringing it up, because you know I sort of got hopeful, and I'm still hopeful that the American people have woken up and they're sick and tired of all the excesses dealing with COVID.
Yeah.
And the people have a better attitude, and we're reading good articles to show that you know the lockdowns were the wrong thing and all this, and yet some are still completely obsessed. I still run into people who are just locked into this, that they have to wear masks still. Fortunately, they're a small majority, a small minority that wants to do that. But the headline under Zero Hedge, who does good reporting on this, won't let us forget, COVID's still out there. At least there's some bad people. The more authoritarian a government is, or more authoritarian an individual is for using that method to socially and medically engineer everything, we'll still hear from. But the headline on Zero Hedge was Canada's Health Minister, quote, "You will never be fully vaxxed." And he wants everybody to have a shot in every 9 months. Yeah, I do it, he said. It's lousy, it's lousy politics. It's a lousy way to solve problems and violate the principles of liberty. But it's really lousy medicine to undermine so many things that were misled. And now people are starting to wake up and say that, who was speaking the science? We even have those people that chomp down on us for saying that natural immunity was something worth looking into. Well, nobody argues that anymore. Everybody knows there's natural immunity, but we still have the people out there that want to rule the world. You know, one thing that I noticed that the two countries that are demanding the most amount of shots, Canada, of course, and there was a time when civil liberties meant something a lot more to Canadians than it does now. But guess who the other country is? China.
Yeah.
China is like, what they do, they had a lockdown for a few months, the markets crashed, and then, we don't have to lock down anymore, as if the medical aspects of a virus shifts like that.
Yeah. It
shifts with dollar signs around it. That's what happened. But anyway, I was. This is worth thinking about to show that when governments get power, they cling to it, even if they have to fib, even if they have to lie outright, even if they want to continue to make more money, they do. And so this still exists out there, and along with this is the fact that the pharmaceuticals came up and they said, well, there's another virus on its way. And I guess they're talking about monkey virus.
Yeah.
And so they offered to all the states, to buy up. I'm sure they're buying up with taxpayers' money. All the states, buy up, be prepared.
Yeah.
And they don't even have, anything to treat yet. And of course, most people know the story that all the states rushed, except one. DeSantis said, we don't need to do this. So he is a gutsy person, and I'm glad he's an independent-minded person.
Yeah.
But anyway, this subject is still with us. And lo and behold, there will be a virus come, and people will get sick. And, every year, if you look back at the statistics on just the regular flu that everybody gets, they changed the inoculation. Maybe one outcome of this would be maybe they didn't have to give a new vaccination for the flu every single year, because it doesn't change anything. Next year, we got to do it again. So this is they'll find something to stir up trouble, and unfortunately, we still have a lot of gullible people out there. And it's not like they don't have access. Of course, the social media did monopolize the scenario on this and what they had to believe. But now I think there's some information coming out that people say, well, there were a group of doctors that were on the right track, and the truth will win out, and let's hope we can help it along.
Yeah, and Canada is very authoritarian. We saw what they did to the trucker protest. They beat them up. They stole all their money. I mean, it's amazing to think what's happened just to the north of the border. You're right. They're partners with China in that respect. Let's put up that first clip because here's what we're talking about. Jean-Yves Duclos, he said, no way. You got to keep getting shot. The whole concept of fully vaxxed is out the window. It's now a COVID shot every 9 months going forward. We'll never be fully vaxxed. And we can look at the next clip. And here's a quote. This is via Zero Hedge, as you point out. Makes no sense to talk about being fully vaxxed. It's about being up to date. So am I up to date on my vaccination? Have I received the vaccination in 9 months? And there he goes. But fortunately, there is something that's happening, which is that his government is losing its popularity. Before we go to that, though, this whole concept doesn't make sense, and it shows that he's pretty much of a dullard, because we even know from the head of the CDC, we know from Rochelle, what's her name from the CDC, said what these shots can no longer do is prevent infection and transmission. So it's not even a vaccine. At the very, very best, maybe it mitigates some aspects of it. But even Rochelle Walensky, said this. So the guy's way out of touch. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And as a result, the people are getting frustrated. And let's look at this next clip, because this is from the same article. It's a recent poll of Canada, the approval of Prime Minister Trudeau. People who strongly disapprove is the largest percent, 41% strongly disapprove. You add another almost 20% of people who moderately disapprove, and you've got a tiny, tiny sliver of people who strongly approve of the Trudeau government, and you might see him going by the wayside. You might see him, because we're starting to see this now, it's maybe just as slow, but Boris Johnson is on the ropes, Schultz is probably going to be next on the ropes, and now Trudeau's on the ropes. Doesn't seem like fitting punishment for what they've done to the people, but I guess it's a start.
Yeah, you'd have to agree that Biden's not doing all that well either.
Good point.
Goes without saying.
Yeah, good point.
But the big problem, because I believe this started before they were able to manipulate the news about the virus, is the economy and the spending and the inflation and all this that goes on, the transfer of wealth from the middle class to the very wealthy, and all the wars that are being fought. Those are the big problems. But so I think Trudeau, his popularity is going down. I still believe people vote from their bellies.
Yeah.
Because they're worrying about the economy now. But what happens if they come up with a vaccine for a weak economy?
Yeah.
But you know what? The pharmaceuticals probably already argue that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's sell more vaccines. This will help the economy. Okay, we want us to hire more people. Okay, we'll hire more people. So it's a really a mess, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're seeing this. People are, they have access to the good information. The people who were severely punished, careers ruined, and just think, the one thing that's never measured, and we don't say it so much, because there was all this negative scientific analysis and the locking out of a debate, how many people, got mistreated? We know about people who've been mistreated, and people died from the treatment, and how about the people that didn't get to go to see the doctor from lockdowns? And there's so many things that happen that they'll never be able to measure. They're starting to measure now the long-term effects of the vaccine, but still people are going out, and here you have people saying, well, we got to be ready. Let's buy up. We can't go, and they're terrified of saying, well, you told us and we didn't do it, and somebody got sick. So it's a bit of terrorism that they use to frighten the politicians into doing things that they probably know better.
Well, let's put up that next clip, because this is related to it, because there are still pockets of stupidity in the U.S. Plenty of them. Here's San Diego. San Diego loses 22% of its police force due to vax mandates. They forced them to get vaccinated, and almost a quarter of the police force said, "Okay, I quit." And they didn't have this next door in L.A. County. The sheriff Villanueva is a great guy. He resisted. He said, "No mandates, no shots. We're not going to enforce this garbage," and they're doing fine. But it's just very interesting. San Diego, no, they didn't get the memo.
Yeah, that's right. No, so this is good news. This hope it seeks in, but you're not likely to see it on the majors, the networks. Yeah. Fortunately, they're losing credibility too. I think the credibility of when our government makes announcements now, most people, take it with a grain of salt, and they were hopeful that they could depend on social networks, and now they're starting to question social networks. Yeah. Even some of the networks, the social networks, are getting into financial trouble because people are tired of it. So in a way, people can sense when they're not being told the truth. And I've told the story before that a young person from college was praising me for telling the truth about the Constitution. He was sort of giving me some praise. And at the same time, I said, the other candidate said the same thing. He believed in the Constitution. We need to, we take an oath of office, and they said all the words right. I said, why didn't you believe them? And he says, we could tell he wasn't telling the truth. So people do have a sense of that, and I think young people have this sense, as well as the people who have been conditioned, by the military-industrial complex and the other special interest groups, because too much is at stake. My job's is at stake, and all this. But of course, I think the goal in life for all decent people is not the fact that they will ever be able to grasp the absolute truth of everything. Nobody can do that. But I think that is a goal of decent people, is always seeking the truth and trying to sort it out. And this is sort of what we've been doing for these last 3, 4, 5 years, just over COVID. Who's telling the truth? And in a way, it was much more frustrating than it is now, because I think people are hearing the other side of the story.
Yeah, that's true. Well, before we move on from COVID, there's some kind of semi-breaking news, and this came out just before we sat down to start the show. We can put on that next clip. But Alex Berenson, who we talked about a lot during COVID, he was always giving very good reporting, very up-to-date. He was challenging the narrative, and on August 28th, 2021, he paid the price. Twitter permanently banned him for this quote, for this tweet. "It doesn't stop infection or transmission. Don't think of it as a vaccine. Think of it as best as a therapeutic with a limited window of efficacy and terrible side effect profile that must be dosed in advance of illness. And we want to mandate it? Insanity." Everything that he wrote there has since been admitted by top health officials, right? But he was permanently banned. But what he did is interesting. He sued Twitter. There's too much to get into the whole details of the case. But what has just happened, and this is from Alex himself, and he is back on Twitter. Alex just sent out to his subscribers, "The parties have come to a mutually acceptable resolution. I have been reinstated. Twitter has acknowledged that my tweets should not have led to my suspension at that time." That's a real victory, I think, for everyone.
That's a big bit of victory. Good news, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And there's going to be more of that, because they try to hide that stuff as possible. But you do need a fighter who's willing to go out there and fight the case, and he did, and he won it. But a lot of other people are going to benefit by it.
I wonder if they're going to reinstate me. I won't hold
I don't know about that.
I'm just too bad.
That's right. They were calling me the other day. They were trying to get get a definition. What have you been doing? I want to move on to something in a way it's a little bit related. Is the Mexican president?
Yeah.
All of a sudden I said, hey, this might be a good guy, or at least he's doing something I like, and that has to do with his position with Assange.
Yeah.
He says, I'd offer him citizenship and I'd offer him asylum. Holy man, this is good. And I thought back, we already today have hit the Canadians. And we ought to make sure it's the Canadian government.
Yeah, there's good people in Canada.
We have a lot of people that actually even listen to our program from Canada. But we do make those points, and of course we praised them because we saw them as a haven for people who, on principle, decided that they didn't want to go over and fight an illegal, unconstitutional, immoral, ridiculous war and go over and get killed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So they said, Canada said they will give us sanctuary. They'll take us in and they won't put us in prison. So it was a sanctuary. But isn't it interesting now that the sanctuary is once again Mexico, not Canada?
Yeah.
So the sanctuary is being offered to Assange, and you'd wonder. I'd like to, because people go by statistics. We know what we believe to be right and the proper position on this. But I'd be fascinated to know. About what the American people really think. My guess is if you do that man in the street thing, I think about 9 out of 10 say, who's Assange?
Yeah.
That's probably what would happen. But I would think that the average person, if they just heard the story of what's going on here, that he committed a crime against the Espionage Act. And nobody else ever has gone to jail except one or two over that. But we're going to put Assange in. Oh, yeah, well, what state does he live in? Oh, he doesn't live in the United States.
He's not American.
But he started telling the truth about what we were doing. And he got, information. And he saw himself as a journalist and a whistleblower type. And what he revealed was very worthwhile. And now, they've tortured him. You say, oh, no, they didn't beat him with a whip. But I don't know what they did, but he's already been tortured because how many years has it been now?
Yeah, solitary confinement. Yeah.
And they're not going to. And now the ruling the other day was that he was going to be sent back to the United States, sent to the United States, and that again should aggravate a lot of people in the world. Here's a guy. He's not a citizen, but he's being not sent back. He's sending to the United States for being punished, to telling the world what was really going on because he got information as a journalist.
Yeah.
Boy, that's pretty bad.
It is, and the Mexican president is a pretty interesting guy, and he's actually very popular. He's a left populist. We can put on that next clip because here's what he got in the news over the last couple of days. They call him AMLO, is Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. He said, if the U.S. persists in demanding that Assange be delivered to the U.S. for trial, and if he's convicted, we may as well go ahead and dismantle the Statue of Liberty because America is toast. That's basically what he says. And here's actually a little bit more. Go to the next one. Here's speaking at a press conference at the National Palace, he called for the most important press in the world, including New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, and Mexico's El País, to convene a meeting to exhort, request, call, so that pardon be granted to Assange. That's great because he's putting them on notice. You guys are the media. You believe in the free press. It's time for you to stand up for one of your own. And here's what he said. If they don't do it, they will be tarnished, and we'll have to start a campaign that if they take him to the U.S. and sentence him to the maximum sentence to die in prison, they will have to dismantle the Statue of Liberty that the French delivered because it's no longer a symbol of freedom. And I think that is great. He says he's going to ask President Biden directly, please pardon this journalist, let him off, don't do this. Hats off to him. He doesn't have to do this. He's really showing himself to be a decent guy. And as you pointed out, he's saying, send him over here. We'll give him citizenship. He can live here.
How about doing something today for our efforts? Would you give the president of Mexico a call? See if he'll come on our program.
We should, yeah.
We might.
I'd love to have him.
If I'm complaining that I don't think that a lot of American citizens even care or know much about it, maybe if we had the president of Mexico come on and get on our program and talk these words, I think that'd be just wonderful. We might even get our full numbers of number of people on our viewership.
Yeah, we should. Well, we'll find him. He's welcome on the show. Well, I guess the last major thing we're going to do is just sort of a watch what they do, not what they say. And let's put up this next one because, as you know, the governments in the UK and Germany and France and elsewhere have been terrified that Putin is going to run roughshod over Europe and take over everything. Well, this is kind of funny. This is troop cuts will put British Army at breaking point, says former Army chief. The UK government's decision to go ahead with planned troop cuts, despite the war in Ukraine, is madness and will put the Army at a breaking point, said a former Army chief. Dr. Paul, I will put this to you. If you are the head of a country and you are convinced that an invasion is coming from outside, would the first thing you do be say, we need to cut our army. We got too many people in here.
Well, if his army is there to defend his country, yes, there's no doubt about it. But if his army is to be designed, and you have to have a big army like the NATO army for the purpose of maintaining, control of the world and the empire, that's a different story. So I think there's two different things here on why you need the troops. But your point of inconsistency, they're not reducing. Let's say we had something to say about what's going on. We might say, well, we can do with a lot less troops because we're bringing our troops home, and we're going to have a defensive group. But that's not what's going on here. And besides, it's going to be canceled because already, evidently, UK shares in the military-industrial complex. We always complain about all weapons are built in 50 different states, but I think they try to pass out that money to the NATO countries, and they get a share in the profits and things. So that is to me the big thing, the motivation. And because technically you could argue that if we had a more libertarian, non-interventionist thing, we wouldn't be sitting there worrying about the invasion. But when you stir up the trouble and the troops are coming, and then you say, "Oh, we don't need the troops," it's almost like you stir up all the trouble. Why is there so much violence in our inner cities? Well, a lot of it is government programming that created the economic environment of that. So they say, well, what we need to do is fire the police.
There's an idea.
So, and that's not the answer. Even whether it's local and dealing with the police and the corruption we have here, or international activity, this just points out again, and that's about essentially what we do on COVID, the inconsistencies. And the one thing that we have found out as we have done our programs, the one thing that unifies people on this issue, Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives, is when the authoritarians get up there and say, we are going to take care of you and you are going to have to listen to us. And that's one thing. Someone will say, yeah, I think you're doing the right thing. But when those thugs wrote those laws and they go out and do it, that's what infuriates people.
Yeah, it does. Well, just to show that it's not about defense, the UK is actually boosting their spending even while they cut troops.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Well, I'm going to finish up today with a great announcement, and I'm happy, and I'm a little bleary-eyed because I stayed up late putting this together. But I'm very happy to do this. Put up that next one. Announcing the 2022 Ron Paul Scholars Seminar. In this picture, you can see, for those of us who aren't watching, Representative Thomas Massie, our personal hero in Congress, delivering the keynote speech last year to the Ron Paul Scholars. It's very easy to do. If you go to ronpaulinstitute.org, on the upper right-hand side, you will see a clickable link, and it'll have an article about the program. It's a one-day program, Dr. Paul, as you know. It's like a foreign policy and civil liberties boot camp. It's like a graduate level seminar. It's for upper division undergrads and grad students. And we have scholarships available. So I think that these students will be able to make it here, with no out-of-pocket costs. They can come to the conference, which is the day afterward. This is the day before our Washington conference. So they have their own day, heavy briefings, heavy discussions, back and forth with experts, with different professors. And then the next day they come and watch the conference, and they can do it essentially for free because we have, thanks to our very generous donors, we have sponsors for each one of these young people. The competition is very stiff, And the main thing, we try to do it this way, you have to act fast. Get your application in fast. We make our decisions quickly, and then you need to book your travel quickly. So it's kind of like the old show Mission Impossible, right? This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. So anyway, go to the site, click it on, read it. If it looks interesting to you, get those applications in right away so that we can make our decisions very quickly. Dr. Paul?
Very good. No, I am very strongly in favor of what you have done personally in making sure this has been in effect, and each year it seems to get more popular because it does follow what I believe in, but I stole some of these ideas from an individual that I really admired in promoting the cause of liberty, and that is Leonard Read at the Foundation for Economic Education. He wasn't against crowds getting together and cheering and having fun, as much as he says the ultimate test was getting a smaller number of people and get them to be interested, to really understand the philosophy, and that if you prepare yourself, he always argued, people are starved for information. Somebody will use these individuals. So when we see these young people coming and spending time there, I think that is just wonderful. And it reminds me one time of this thing about the large groups and the small groups that, and I'm sure you remember this, we had a pretty neat barbecue celebration in Galveston during one of the campaigns. And there were, not a couple hundred or 50 people. It wasn't a Leonard Read crowd to go over a class period of digging into the details of liberty, but it was involved. So we were having thousands at the barbecue, and somebody said, well, we have a lot of special people coming here that are philosophically attuned to the libertarian message. So somebody said, well, let's have the barbecue doesn't start till 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So why don't we at 2 o'clock, just get a good little place, because there'll be people coming that will be interested more in a detail, a study committee like this. And so we said, okay, we did it. And guess what? I got in a lot of trouble. I've never had anybody come up to me and say, Ron, what are you doing? And what happened was we were expecting, it was on Galveston. It was a nice day. They should be on the beach. But, but they came, once they heard there was like a seminar and the speakers were going to get together and talk about the serious philosophy. All of a sudden, we had a lot of people, and it filled up, and some people didn't get in, and that's what they were upset about. And I always thought that was just great that people were interested in the ideas and wanted to come and decided that it was more valuable than loafing on the beach. But anyway, I think that a prevailing attitude by a large number of people for all our viewpoints is very, very important, because those efforts have an influence, and that's why the numbers were important to show how many people were objecting to lockdowns, and when those numbers were up, instead of 10 of us talking. But you still need those 10 and 15. You need these study committees. You need these people who are really going to be determined and offer the explanation of exactly why liberty is superior to authoritarianism. It is so important, because that does influence other people. So you need both, but of course I'm very interested in getting people involved to find out, because logic is on our side, truth is on our side, and that's why I figure that we're winning some of those battles now in the argument over the science of what you do with COVID. And I think that's successful. And that's a lot better than thinking you can solve it with the use of force, because that method's been used for thousands of years, and it generally doesn't have any permanent changes on that. So we will continue to do that here at the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. So I want to thank everybody for being supportive of our efforts, and hopefully we see you in not too distant future at one of our conferences. And I want to ask you to return to the Liberty Report soon.